The stars gleamed faintly as Arya floated through the silent expanse of the galaxy, her ship, the Voyager, drifting aimlessly. She had never intended to be here. Earth was thousands of light years away, and her mission was simple: deliver a message to a distant colony. But fate had other plans. A malfunction in the ship's navigation system had left her stranded in a region of space known as the Forbidden Expanse, a place so remote that even the bravest explorers avoided it. No one knew what lay within, but everyone had heard the stories. Tales of a creature so powerful, so ancient, that it could erase entire planets from existence with a mere thought. They called it Gorath, the Void's beast. Most believed it was just a myth, an old legend designed to scare children. But Arya knew better than to dismiss such stories. The strange readings she had picked up on her ship's sensors earlier were no coincidence. Something was out there. Something far more dangerous than any of the terrifying creatures Earth had ever faced. For days, Arya had tried to fix her ship, but every attempt had failed. Desperation began to creep in, and as she gazed at the uncharted stars around her, the isolation of deep space sank into her bones. She wasn't just alone, she was helpless. Then, as if summoned by her very thoughts, a massive shadow swept across the ship's viewports, blocking out the stars. Her breath caught in her throat. The sensors began to flicker erratically, and the instruments on her console went haywire, unable to calculate anything. The very fabric of space around her seemed to bend and distort. Arya's heart pounded in her chest as she frantically tried to regain control of the ship, but nothing worked. From the blackness ahead, a presence made itself known. It wasn't just a ship or a shadow. It was something much bigger. Something alive. Something that commanded the universe around it. Her thoughts raced. Could this be the fabled Gorath? For the first time in her life, fear gripped her like a vice. But, oddly enough, it wasn't the usual kind of fear that paralyzes a person. It was something deeper, something primal. The instinct to survive was strong, but an even stronger pull nudged her forward. Curiosity. Gorath, the Void's beast, had always been portrayed as a mindless destroyer, a force of nature that couldn't be reasoned with. But what if that was just a misconception? What if there was more to this creature than anyone had ever realized? The ship shuddered violently, as if it had collided with an invisible wall. Alarms blared in Arya's ears, and for a moment, everything seemed to blur together: the beeping, the tremors, the uncertainty. But through it all, there was a strange calmness inside her. Maybe it was foolishness, but she didn't want to run. She couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter might be something more than just a death sentence. The creature, whatever it was here. And it was waiting for her to make the next move. Suddenly, the darkness outside the ship parted, revealing a gargantuan form. Arya's eyes widened in disbelief. The creature was enormous. Its body seemed to stretch across the very stars themselves, glowing with an eerie light that pulsed like a beating heart. The surface of its being was like shifting, jagged metal, yet it moved fluidly, almost as though it existed outside the laws of physics. The creature's eyes, or what could be mistaken for eyes, were two piercing orbs of light, each the size of a small moon. They locked onto Arya's ship with an intensity that sent a cold shiver down her spine. This was no mere animal. It was intelligent. It was aware. And in that moment, Arya realized that everything she had known about the universe was about to be shattered. The ship's console flashed warnings, urging her to escape, to jump to light speed, to do anything to get away. But there was nowhere to go. She was trapped in the heart of the creature's domain. Time seemed to slow as the reality of her situation set in. Arya was about to face something that even the greatest minds in the galaxy had failed to comprehend. Something that had existed long before humanity's first steps on Earth. Her survival now depended not on her skills as an engineer or her knowledge of space navigation, but on something much more important: her ability to understand this creature. She knew, deep down, that she couldn't simply fight her way out of this. Gorath wasn't a beast to be slain with weapons. No, this was a force that had existed since the dawn of time, something ancient and far beyond human understanding. And yet, there was a small flicker of hope in Arya's chest, a spark that refused to be extinguished. Maybe, just maybe, she could reach it. After all, humanity had survived countless challenges throughout history, from devastating wars to cataclysmic natural disasters. If she could just connect with this creature, understand it. For a brief moment, there was no sound. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, the creature spoke. Not in words, not in a language Arya could comprehend, but in a way that transcended speech altogether. A presence flooded her mind, a deep, resonant voice that wasn't just heard but felt. It was the kind of voice that made her feel small, insignificant, but also incredibly alive. The words weren't spoken, but they were clear. Who dares to approach me? The question rang through her consciousness, and she was caught off guard. It wasn't anger that filled the creature's voice, but curiosity. It was as if Garath had never encountered anyone like her before. Arya swallowed hard, her throat dry. Her mind raced. Should she speak? Should she try to communicate? She couldn't ignore the danger of angering something so powerful, but her instincts screamed at her to try. I'm Arya, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. I come from Earth. I'm just a human. I mean no harm. She paused, wondering if the creature would even understand her words. But something told her that this was the right course of action. She was human, small, fragile, but capable of compassion and understanding. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was the one thing the universe's most feared creature had never encountered. For a long moment, there was silence. Arya's breath caught in her chest, her heart racing in the uncertainty. Had she made a mistake? Would the creature turn on her, unleashing the full force of its power? She didn't know. All she knew was that she was standing at the threshold of something that could either end her life or change the course of the universe forever. The creature's gaze, those enormous, glowing orbs, never wavered. It was watching her, studying her, as though deciding whether she was worthy of its attention. Then, slowly, something unexpected happened. The beast's immense form began to shift. The pulsating light dimmed slightly, and for the briefest of moments, Arya thought she saw something in the creature's eyes. A flicker. A hesitation. Something akin to curiosity. The void around her seemed less oppressive. Could this be the beginning of something more? Something that no one, not even the most advanced civilizations, could ever have imagined? Arya didn't know, but she wasn't about to run. She wasn't about to give up just yet. She had one chance to make a connection, and she would take it no matter the cost. The silence between Arya and the creature stretched, heavy and suffocating, as she awaited some kind of response. The vastness of space around her seemed to close in, as if the very stars held their breath. Arya's heart pounded in her chest, each beat louder than the last. She had never felt so small, yet strangely, she also felt as if she were at the center of everything. The ship remained eerily still, the hum of its engines the only sound in the otherwise oppressive quiet. It was as if the universe itself was waiting for the next moment to unfold, to reveal what would happen next. Then, with a movement that defied the rules of physics, the creature shifted. It was almost imperceptible at first, just a subtle ripple in the air, a deep pulse that resonated through the ship's hull. Arya blinked, unsure if she had imagined it. But then, it happened again. The dark shape that loomed outside the ship seemed to grow, expanding like a black hole ready to consume everything around it. Arya's breath caught in her throat, her eyes wide. It wasn't just the size of the creature that unsettled her, but the strange energy she felt radiating from it, an energy that didn't just come from a physical source, but from the very essence of the creature itself. It felt alive, conscious, aware of her presence in a way that made her skin crawl. The voice returned, but this time it wasn't a question. It wasn't curiosity. It was something else entirely, a challenge. "You are far from your kind," the voice said, deep and resonant, vibrating in her very bones. "Do you understand the cost of your presence here?" Arya swallowed hard. She wasn't sure how to answer. Could she even answer? She had never expected this. She had expected destruction, perhaps even instant death. But here it was something far worse, something that tested her in ways she didn't know she could be tested. It wasn't just her life on the line now. This creature, this Garath, wasn't just interested in killing. It wanted to see what she was made of. It wanted to test her. Without waiting for a response, the creature's massive form shifted again. This time, it was followed by an explosion of energy. Arya felt it before she saw it. The very air around her seemed to crackle with power. The temperature in the cockpit plummeted as the space around her warped and distorted. And then, without warning, the ship was no longer floating peacefully. It was thrown into the heart of a violent storm. But this wasn't a natural storm. The stars themselves flickered out, as if they were being snuffed out one by one. The blackness around her deepened, and the ship lurched violently. Arya fought to keep her grip on the console as the ship bucked and shuddered. Her hands flew over the controls, trying to stabilize the ship, but nothing she did seemed to work. The controls were unresponsive, as though the very energy field surrounding her was blocking her attempts. She tried to steady her breathing, but panic rose in her chest. The storm intensified, and she could feel it pulling at the edges of her mind. She could hear whispers now, distant voices on the edge of her consciousness, voices full of despair and rage. Was this the creature's doing? Was it testing her, seeing how long she could endure this madness before she broke? The ship groaned under the strain, its hull creaking as though it might tear apart at any moment. The lights flickered, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls of the cockpit. Arya could feel herself slipping, her sense of reality starting to unravel. The pressure inside her head was unbearable, the voices growing louder, the storm growing fiercer. Her hands trembled as they gripped the seat. She couldn't keep going like this. She had to do something. Anything. How long will you last? The voice of Garath echoed through her mind, sharp and demanding. How long before you break? Before your mind succumbs to the darkness? The challenge was clear. This wasn't about surviving the storm. It was about her will to survive, about her strength to hold on when everything around her screamed for her to let go. It was about showing Garath that she was not like the others who had tried and failed to face this creature. She wasn't going to succumb to fear. She wasn't going to break. In the swirling chaos, Arya closed her eyes, shutting out the storm, the voices, the terror. She focused only on one thing: her connection to herself. She reminded herself of why she was here. She reminded herself of Earth, of the people she loved, of everything that had made her who she was. She was human. And humanity was defined by its will to endure, to rise above, no matter how impossible the challenge. No storm, no force, no creature could take that away from her. As the storm raged around her, Arya found her center. She wasn't just a victim in this vast, uncaring universe. She was a force. She was alive. She had fought for everything she had on Earth, and she would fight for her survival now. The storm didn't stop, but it didn't matter. Her hands found the controls again, and this time, they responded. The ship stabilized, inch by inch. Slowly, the blackness around her began to retreat, the energy that had warped the space around her dissipating. The pressure in her head began to lift, and the voices grew faint once more. In the stillness that followed, Arya felt something shift. The presence of Garath was still there, still vast and intimidating, but there was a different energy now. Something changed. It was as if the creature was no longer just watching her. It was considering her. There was respect, there may be even a kind of acknowledgement. The storm had ended, but the challenge was far from over. The voice spoke again, but this time it wasn't as harsh. It wasn't a taunt or a test. It was curious. You have endured. I have seen it. You are different. Arya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She was still alive. She had passed the first test, but she knew that Garath wasn't finished with her yet. There was more to come. The creature had tasted her will to survive, and it would demand more. She wasn't sure what Garath wanted from her, but she had no choice but to face whatever came next. It was as if she had stepped into the heart of something far greater than herself, a force that could reshape the galaxy. And in that moment, Arya realized something: Garath wasn't just testing her. It was challenging humanity itself. The creature wanted to know if humanity was worthy of surviving in this galaxy, a galaxy that had never known peace. And Arya was the first to face that challenge, alone, vulnerable, yet full of the one thing that could change everything: her will. The silence that followed the storm was not peaceful. It was a heavy kind of silence, one that pressed down on Arya's chest like a weight she couldn't escape. Korath, the creature of myth, hovered outside her ship, its immense presence casting an eerie shadow on everything around her. It had spoken to her, acknowledged her will, but what did that mean? Was it toying with her? Testing her further? Or was there something more? The uncertainty gnawed at her mind, refusing to let go. She knew that the creature had seen her endurance, felt the strength of her will, but did it care? Did it understand what she had sacrificed to get this far? Or was she just another fleeting curiosity in the vast emptiness of space? Arya leaned forward in her seat, her fingers gripping the console as she watched the creature through the viewports. Its form remained a mystery, shifting and shimmering in the darkness, never fully revealing itself. For a moment, it seemed as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting. The energy surrounding the ship pulsed, not with violence this time, but with something more subtle, something akin to a deep, thoughtful presence. She wasn't sure how, but she could feel it. It was as if the creature was waiting for something only she could provide. Then, once again, the voice echoed inside her mind. It was softer this time, almost gentle. You are different, human. You have endured the trial. I have seen your strength. The voice was filled with something she hadn't heard before, curiosity. But your will alone is not enough. I have known beings stronger than you, smarter than you. But none have ever come to this place. None have ever been where you are now. Arya's heart skipped a beat. Was it offering some kind of recognition? Acknowledging that her humanity had reached a level the creature could respect? She wasn't sure. Her mind raced with questions she didn't know how to answer. But one thing was certain: this was not just about survival anymore. Korath was no longer testing her strength. It was testing her mind, her heart, her very understanding of the universe. The ship's systems blinked again, and a new set of readings appeared on the console. The darkness outside began to shift, and for the first time, Arya saw a new kind of light, not the cold, distant stars she had come to know, but something closer, something warm. It was almost as if Korath was offering her something beyond just the challenge. But what? Before she could make sense of it, the creature's form began to change once again. The blackness in space shifted, revealing flashes of color that weren't from the stars or the ship's sensors. It was a strange, ethereal glow, radiating from the creature itself. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate, like it was trying to communicate something deeper than words could describe. Arya felt a strange connection to it, a pull in her chest that made her skin tingle. Do you see it, Arya? The voice was inside her mind once more, but this time it felt different, less imposing, and more intimate. You are not alone in this universe. You never were. Everything you have known, everything you are, is part of something much bigger. I am part of that. You are part of that. Her breath caught. The creature wasn't just speaking to her as an individual anymore. It was speaking to her as if it saw something inside her, something that transcended human understanding. It was as if Korath was trying to show her a deeper truth, a connection that went beyond the limits of physical space and time. But how could she understand something like that? How could a human ever comprehend the vastness of what Korath was hinting at? The connection between them deepened, and Arya felt a strange warmth in her chest, a pull toward the creature. It was as if the boundaries between them were fading, as if space itself was bending to allow something more intimate to pass between them. She didn't fully understand it, but in that moment, she realized something she had never thought possible. She wasn't just surviving the encounter with Korath. She was forging a bond with it. A bond that went beyond simple survival, beyond strength and will. This was something much more profound. But even as the warmth filled her, Arya couldn't ignore the underlying tension. The creature wasn't offering friendship, not in the way she had ever known it. There was still an edge to its presence, a reminder that it was far beyond anything she could fully comprehend. The bond they were forming was one of mutual understanding, but it was not without its dangers. She was not sure if Garath would ever be able to fully trust her, but she was beginning to understand something that terrified her. If she wasn't careful, the bond between them could go both ways. It could mean destruction, not just for her, but for everything she knew. Humanity, Garath's voice resonated again, but this time it seemed to hold more than just curiosity. You are capable of more than you realize, more than your kind has ever seen. But with that power comes responsibility. You must understand, I am not offering you my power, I am offering you a choice. The words were like a jolt to her system. A choice? What choice was she being given? To live? To die? To break the connection? Or to embrace it fully? Arya's mind was spinning, trying to make sense of the creature's intentions. But what choice did she have? She had already passed the test, endured the storm, and felt its pull. If she backed down now, would she be throwing away the opportunity of a lifetime? Or was there something else at play? Something more dangerous than she could understand? The ship trembled again, this time with a deep, rumbling hum, as if the creature was shifting its attention from her to something bigger. Arya's hands clenched around the controls as she braced for whatever came next. She wasn't sure if she was ready for it, but she couldn't back away now. Whatever Garath wanted, whatever this connection meant, she had already crossed a line, and now she would have to face the consequences. In the distance, the stars began to shift again, but this time, it wasn't just Garath's form that glowed. The very fabric of space seemed to twist and ripple, as if reality itself was being reshaped by the bond they were forming. Arya's breath caught in her throat as she realized the truth. This was no longer just about her survival. It was about something far greater. The creature wasn't simply testing her, it was showing her the key to something far beyond what she could ever have imagined. And with that knowledge came a terrible, wonderful truth. She was now connected to the very heart of the universe. Now, you must choose. Garath's voice rumbled once again, a deep and final sound that reverberated in her chest. What will you do with the power you have been given? Arya's heart raced, but for the first time since the storm began, she felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. This was her moment. This was her choice. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was something more. Something that could change everything. But would she embrace it? Arya's thoughts were a whirlwind as she tried to process everything Garath had revealed to her. The bond between them was growing stronger, a strange, intangible connection that felt like the fabric of reality itself was intertwining with her very being. Every second felt like an eternity, and yet it was as though time itself was slipping away. The ship, once her only sanctuary, now seemed like a fragile shell against the vastness of what she was facing. She could feel the pulse of the universe beneath her fingertips, the power Garath spoke of. She could sense the energy shifting, as if everything was being drawn into a singular point, a point where her decisions would have consequences far beyond anything she could fathom. The creature had offered her a choice, but the weight of it was crushing, and she had no idea what was truly at stake. The stillness in the cockpit was unnerving, the silence stretching out like an oppressive force. The stars outside flickered again, their distant light momentarily snuffed out by a shadow that moved faster than anything she had ever seen. Arya's breath caught in her throat as she saw a fleet of ships, massive and imposing, entering her line of sight. They appeared as dark silhouettes against the stars, their shapes foreign and terrifying, their presence undeniable. The ship's sensors beeped wildly, indicating a fleet of warships, each one far larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever encountered. And they were closing in fast. The voice of Garath rumbled in her mind again, louder than before, yet tinged with an unfamiliar urgency. They have come. The Zenthari Empire. They will stop at nothing to seize the power you have been offered, the power you now wield. The words hit Arya like a wave, her pulse racing as panic surged through her. She had read about the Zenthari, their cruelty, their relentless conquest, their thirst for domination. The stories were whispered in fearful tones, legends of a race that had devoured entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but ruin and ashes. And now they were here. For her. Her mind spun, unable to process the magnitude of what was happening. The Zenthari were not just an empire, they were an unstoppable force of nature, a civilization built on the idea of conquest, enslaving or exterminating all those who stood in their way. They had the technology, the resources, and the sheer power to obliterate entire worlds. And now they had discovered her. The power Goroth had spoken of, the bond she was forming with the creature, had drawn them here. The Zenthari wouldn't stop until they had it for themselves, and she, the human girl who had stumbled into something beyond her comprehension, was now their primary target. The fleet of Zenthari ships grew larger in the viewport, their sheer size and firepower enough to send a chill down Arya's spine. She could see their dark, angular silhouettes, adorned with strange markings that shimmered ominously in the void. Each ship was like a fortress, built to withstand the most powerful attacks and dish out destruction in equal measure. And they were coming straight for her. Arya's mind raced as she tried to think of a way out. But what could she do? Her ship was nothing compared to the Zenthari warships. She was just one human, alone in the vast emptiness of space, with no way to fight back. Her only advantage was the connection she had with Garath, but even that was still so new, so unstable. Would it be enough to protect her from the oncoming storm? Would Garath's power be enough to stop the Zenthari Empire from crushing everything in their path? The ship's systems blared warnings, urging her to take evasive action. But it was too late. The Zenthari ships were already on top of her, surrounding her in a menacing formation. Arya's hands shook as she gripped the controls, but there was no escaping the inevitable. The Zenthari had arrived. And then, just as quickly as the sense of impending doom had risen, a new presence filled the ship, a pulse of energy so strong that it seemed to warp the very air around her. It was Goroth, its immense power surging through the bond they had formed. She felt the creature's presence more clearly than ever before, felt its strength, its ancient wisdom, and its infinite rage. It was as though Goroth itself was preparing for battle. It had been silent for a while, allowing her to process the bond, allowing her to face the trials. But now, there was no time for more games. The Zenthari Empire had come to claim the power she had tapped into, and Garath was not going to let them take it. Not without a fight. The voice of Garath echoed in her mind, its tone a deep, resonant command that sent a shiver down her spine. Do not fear, human. You are not alone. I will guide you, but you must trust in me. You must let the power of the bond flow freely. Only then will you have the strength to stand against them. Arya's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Could she do it? Could she trust Garath, a creature she barely understood, to help her face the Zenthari Empire? She had no choice. The Zenthari were here, and there was no escaping them. They would either kill her or enslave her, and there was nothing she could do to stop them. Unless the bond with Garath was more than just a lifeline. Could it be the key to survival? The ship's systems began to hum in response to Garath's power, the lights flickering as the energy around her intensified. She felt the creature's presence like a surge of electricity running through her veins. Her hands, though shaking, moved instinctively to the controls, as though the power of the bond had awakened something deep inside her. The ship trembled again, but this time, it wasn't from fear, it was from the raw energy that was beginning to build. She didn't understand it, but she didn't need to. All that mattered was that it was happening. She was no longer just a helpless human in a ship. She was connected to something far greater. The Zenthari fleet moved into position, their weapons primed and ready to fire. Arya could hear the faintest hum of their energy shields, the hiss of weapons charging, and the looming threat of their attack. She was outnumbered, outgunned, and yet, as she gripped the controls, she felt a surge of confidence, something she hadn't felt since her first encounter with Garath. She wasn't alone. And then, as the Zenthari ships began to fire, a flash of light exploded in front of her, bright, blinding, and powerful. The very fabric of space seemed to twist, as if reality itself was bending to Garath's will. The Zenthari's energy blasts were deflected before they could reach her, their attacks useless against the immense power now coursing through the ship. A deep rumbling sound filled the cockpit, and Arya felt herself being lifted, as though the ship was being carried by an unseen force. In the space outside the ship, the Zenthari were frozen in shock. Their weapons faltered, their ships faltering as the impossible happened. The power of the bond between Arya and Garath had manifested in a way they had never anticipated. The battle for survival had begun, and Arya had become something far greater than a mere human. She was a force that the Zenthari had never encountered before. And for the first time, she felt the full weight of what that meant. The Zenthari Empire had come, but now they would learn the true power of humanity and the true strength of the bond that connected Arya to something far older and more powerful than anything they had ever known. The Zenthari Empire was not prepared for what they encountered. Arya's hands trembled as she gripped the controls, but the tremors weren't from fear, they were from the sheer force of the power coursing through her. Outside, the void of space had become a battleground, and she, the lone human girl, was at the center of it all. The Zenthari fleet, once so confident, now hesitated as the energy shields around her ship flared with an intensity they could not comprehend. Arya had never felt anything like this before. The raw, untamed strength of the bond she shared with Garath was no longer just a connection. It was a weapon, a force of nature. She could feel the Zenthari ships circling around her, but they no longer seemed so invincible. Their once pristine formations were starting to break apart, their weapons faltering as the energy from Garath surged forward in waves. Arya's mind raced as she tried to keep up with the chaos unfolding outside. The Zenthari had never encountered a human like her. They had underestimated the power of the bond she had formed with Garath, a bond that transcended their understanding of reality itself. The creature was not just a beast of destruction, it was an ancient force, one that had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. And now, it was on her side. With a sharp command from Garath echoing in her mind, Arya steered the ship through a series of evasive maneuvers, her hands moving with precision. The Zenthari ships fired again, but the blasts never reached her. Instead, they were absorbed into a shield of energy that shimmered around her ship, an invisible wall that repelled their weapons with ease. Arya could feel the bond between her and Garath tightening, a connection so powerful that it seemed to shape the very fabric of space itself. With each passing moment, her understanding of the creature's power grew clearer. She was no longer a mere human. She was something more, something dangerous. And she wasn't going to let the Zenthari take that from her. One of the Zenthari warships broke from the formation and charged at her, its weapons glowing bright with destructive energy. Arya didn't flinch. She had no time for fear. As the ship loomed closer, she felt a surge of power from Garath, a wave of force so overwhelming that it felt like the universe itself was pushing back. With a sharp movement, Arya guided her ship directly into the path of the oncoming Zenthari warship. The moment the ships collided, a brilliant flash of light erupted, momentarily blinding both Arya and the Zenthari. When the light faded, the Zenthari warship was no more. It had been torn apart by the force of the collision, its hull disintegrating into nothingness. The other ships in the Zenthari fleet hesitated, their weapons powered down as if in disbelief. The Zenthari, known for their unrelenting conquest and destruction, were now faced with something they could not comprehend: a human, standing alone against them, armed with the power of a creature that could bend the very laws of the universe. But it was not just the Zenthari fleet that was retreating. It was the entire concept of their dominance. In that moment, something fundamental had shifted. Humanity, a species they had once dismissed as weak, now held the power to challenge them. Arya didn't have time to savor the victory. The Zenthari, though shaken, were not defeated. More ships began to arrive, warships larger and more fearsome than any she had seen before. The first wave of the Zenthari was retreating, but their reinforcements were coming. Arya's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was the beginning of something much larger. The Zenthari Empire would not be so easily dissuaded. They would return, and next time, they would come with everything they had. But Arya wasn't just going to sit back and wait for them to strike. She had tasted the power that lay within her connection to Garath, and it was more than enough to fuel her next steps. She felt a surge of confidence, an understanding that no matter how many ships the Zenthari sent, she would stand her ground. The creature had given her a gift of strength, of will, and of an untapped potential she had never imagined. And she was not going to let that go to waste. The voice of Gorath rumbled inside her mind, calm yet filled with purpose. You have proven your strength, human. But the Zenthari are not your true enemy. They are but a shadow of what lies beyond. You are not just the survivor of this test. You are the key to the future of your people. Arya's breath hitched. What did that mean? The future of humanity? The implications of those words were staggering, and for a moment, she didn't know how to process them. She had come to this point as an individual, seeking to survive, to prove her worth. But now, she was part of something much larger, something that could change the entire course of human history. Outside, the Zenthari warships regrouped, forming an even larger battle formation. Their weapons powered up, their engines hummed with deadly intent. The tension in the air was palpable, but Arya didn't flinch. She was ready. She had to be. We cannot defeat them through force alone, Gorath's voice echoed once more, this time with a note of finality. You must show them what humanity is truly capable of. You must unite your people. You must forge an alliance that can stand against not just the Zenthari, but the darkness that threatens to consume the galaxy. Arya's heart raced as she understood. This wasn't just about fighting back. This was about leading humanity into a new age where they would no longer be the weak, the defenseless, the prey. This was the moment when humanity would rise, when the true potential of her species would be realized. The Zenthari were only the beginning. There were other forces out there, far more dangerous, and humanity had to be ready. The ship's controls hummed in her hands as she prepared to make her move. She wasn't just going to destroy the Zenthari fleet. She was going to send a message that humanity was not to be underestimated, that they had the power to stand against anything the galaxy threw at them. The energy between her and Gorath surged, building to a crescendo. The time had come. Arya would be the spark that ignited the fire of humanity's resurgence. She opened a communication channel, and her voice rang out, strong and clear. Zenthari Empire, she said, her words carrying through the silence of space. You may think you have come to conquer, but you have made a grave mistake. Humanity will no longer bow to anyone. We will fight. We will rise. And we will win. The Zenthari fleet responded with a barrage of fire, but it was too late. The bond between Arya and Gorath had forged something unstoppable. The Zenthari's attacks were absorbed, deflected, and turned back upon them with a force they could not match. The tide had turned. The age of humanity had begun. In the distance. The stars seemed to shimmer brighter than ever before. Arya, once a simple human girl, now stood at the forefront of a new era. She had proven her strength, forged an unbreakable bond, and, in doing so, had unlocked the power to lead her people into a future filled with endless possibilities. The Zenthari were only the beginning. The true challenges lay ahead, but Arya was ready. Humanity had been given its chance to rise, and with Gorath by her side, nothing could stop them.